Hi, I'm Anvil Panow, and I wrote a story I call The Slave, and I want to read it to you out loud. For a change, she wanted to write not just anything, but something really creative. But what was the point? Life was so brutally meaningless with all the chatter going on about how bad of a person she was. If she were really that bad, what did she not even remember doing that she was not even being forgiven for? What could have been as bad as those blabbing fools sounded like to her all the time? One day she started hearing two people actually caring about her welfare. Surprised, she thought that maybe she could write something interesting by just writing down their words as if they were lines in a play. She knew that copying anybody's words without their permission was usually bad, but in her case, would there really be anything wrong with it? Just like all those other talkers about her she'd ever heard before, those newly discovered incessant chatterers weren't doing anything to really help her either. Besides, maybe they really were just practicing their lines, perhaps for an upcoming acting performance of sorts. How was she supposed to know anyway, without really doing something about how sincerely caring they sounded, in the face of how contradictory their utter complacency about her own welfare seemed? She might even find out their location, even right next to her, for all she knew. And wouldn't discovering their whereabouts be the only way to relieve herself of such intense suffering anyway? Deciding that an actual change for her own relief from her own suffering might really have suddenly emanated from some unknown source upon her own life, she quickly grabbed a pencil and a notebook and started jotting down the two strangers' words. Clara, she's really sad, isn't she? I know, but we can't do anything about it, Mabel. Just do something. Can't you just go over there and hand her something? Like what? A piece of cheese like she's a rat? No, I mean something meaningful and significant, like a brand new sweater or hat. Something beautiful she can wear. But if I do that, I won't be allowed to do anything. One time when I gave her something in the mail, I got a nasty letter telling me off for helping well, I don't even know what it meant. She was suddenly glad that she had finished taking that transcription class in school. Throughout all of college, she had been perplexed over the meaning behind all of her studies and traits that she didn't think she was ever going to make a living out of. But now, one of her skills was finally coming in handy. Not for a living, though, but for some other reason. Something much more important than money. Something spiritual. Who would even know if you met her at her front door anyway? No one's even going to know what's going on. Who's really watching anyway? Anybody who can really do anything? There is someone watching who could make a difference in my life. I know there is. How else would I have gotten that nasty letter? And how did someone return that very gift of mine right back to me, without even telling me or anything? Who has the power to decide that much about my own life? She returned it to you, didn't she? No, she didn't. She never even got it. I know she didn't because the package wasn't even opened and was stamped undeliverable to addressee. And she was right there the whole time, like she couldn't receive any mail. She can too receive mail. I know because I see it happening all the time out there. Her box is full of mail almost every day. She felt inspired to draw a pretty sweater, something she would like to wear to a party. Excited, she got out her colorful markers. Big, long strides flowed from her pens, especially the purple one, really bright and bold. But just to start with, certainly some bright yellow highlights later, and definitely navy blue, too, to deepen the ridges. She didn't really get much mail, though. Through her sliding door and her front door came to her, along with her regular food, clothing, hygiene and household items, including small pieces of firewood and boxes of matches, just a few ads, and only now and then, nothing all that significant. But a sweater like the one she was drawing would be like $1,000,000. Are you sure, Clara? How do you really know whose box you're ever looking at anyway? It's her box, all right. I saw my gift right there inside it. It was sticking out of the box a little when a big, grimy hand reached in and pulled it all the way out, just like that. And then I didn't see what happened next. Don't you think that was really her hand? No, it was not. She doesn't have big, grimy hands. It was a slob's hand, the hairy paw of some slimy nut who doesn't even care about anything. Did you tell the police? It smelled theft, isn't it? You think I didn't tell the police? Of course I told the police. Why wouldn't I tell the police? But did it really matter? That's the thing going on. Why didn't it even matter? How do you know it didn't matter? Because when I tried sending her something else right after I told the police, the same thing happened. The exact same thing. Just like clockwork. Right there in front of my eyes. Now, if that doesn't mean somebody's out to get me, nothing does. Did you tell the police again? At this point, why bother? If they didn't do anything about it to begin with, then they're never going to care about me. They didn't even stop by to check on me. Don't they have to catch the thief? How are they going to do that if they don't even examine the witness? I can't tell them anything without an investigation. It's not really all that significant, is it, Clara? They've got much bigger crimes to deal with. Murders and heists, drunk drivers, a lot of stuff the weight of importance of your little problem doesn't even come close to. It's up to you to make that first move and change your life for the better. For yourself and that poor girl, too. She's not poor. She has more than I'll ever have. What does she even have? Is she really all that rich? She's got so much money I can't even believe it. Don't you know how much she has? Where is it? I don't even see anything over there. That place is a shack. Where are the shingles? And it's so teeny. How does she even crawl out of bed? I don't mean that. I mean she makes incredible things. Entirely from scratch. All the time. How do you even know? I don't even see anything like that over there. I have it all. Clara. What? You do not steal from her, do you? Yes, Mabel. I take all her stuff from her without ever telling her what I'm up to. She never even knows what's going on. No, not you, Clara. That can't be. No way. You've got to be kidding me. You're lying, aren't you? Tell me that it isn't true. I'm sorry, Mabel. I'm telling you the truth. I stash all her stuff away in the basement. In the basement? Where at in the basement? Why haven't I seen you going down there? When you were not here, I dug a tunnel from the tool shed to the basement, and I added another door in the basement wall. You did what? A tunnel? I can't breathe. I'm going to pass out. Catch me before I hit the ground. Keep standing, Mabel. This isn't over. What's next, Clara? The apocalypse? Not quite. It's still pretty bad, though. It's about the money. It's a lot that I actually owe her. How much do you think you really owe her? That's what I mean about her wealth. I know how much she's supposed to have for what she does, and she doesn't even know it's her livelihood. She thinks it's just a hobby, but it's so much I can't even do anything. She took a break from her sweater design to check her finances. Still the same, just a little bit in her account. She never had much money. No one ever told her about a living as an artist. Just chains was all the talk in school. At a tiny kitchen sink, she ran a little tap water from a tiny faucet into a little fan she had designed and welded out of sheet tin. Placing the pan of water on a tiny stovetop burner, she twisted the somewhat loose knob of the burner several times until the burner lit. Waiting for the water to boil, she sat next to the tiny kitchen in a tiny wooden chair at a tiny dining room table in a tiny dining room. dropping a plain tea bag into a little teacup she had designed and baked out of molding clay. Clara, have you been trying actually to pay that girl just for her art? Yes, Anvil, but it's impossible to do. I'm not even allowed to have anything to do with her. Do you know what's going on? What do you know about what's going on, Mabel? There is something so bad going on that I can't even figure out what it is. It's just that every time I try to have anything to do with that girl, I get some kind of reprimand, and without any explanation whatsoever. How does that make a bit of sense? I don't know either, Clara, but then again, whose hand is really the big and grimy one? Your own? No, Mabel, I told you. That wasn't my hand in her box. You've got all of that girl's art in the basement, and that wasn't you stealing from her own mailbox? Why wasn't it? What is the difference between her own house and her own mailbox when it comes to her right to keep her own private property? And how does it all get to the tool shed anyway? Does it just fly there on a broomstick like a witch? I know I don't have the right in a way, but it's the only way I can ever have anything to do with her. I have to be her manager. It's just the way it is. But something sinister is blocking me from my plan in life, and that's not my fault. It's something I can't put a finger on, something I can't see going on, something completely outside of my sphere, and I have no control over it, and it totally envelops every blessed second of my utterly sacred life, with a sick, evil stench of blind indifference towards the rights of all of humanity. That's quite a strong statement, Clara. Are you sure it's that big of a deal? It is that much of a problem, Mabel. How else would I keep moving all her stuff to the basement? Moving? You mean you're like just transferring goods from one store to another? Like she's just moving in with us? Oh, Mabel, do people think she's actually my roommate? Or even my wife? Maybe I can do something with her after all. But she doesn't even know where all her stuff is. She keeps throwing it all away for some reason. If she's going to just keep doing that, I might as well take it to the tool shed myself. As far as I can tell from the way things are going, no one else is ever going to have anything to do with any of it anyway. In a tiny living room, slumped down in a tiny, thinly cushioned, gray-knit, worn, upholstered chair, next to a dim flicker of a fading fire fizzling in a tiny, dusty, soot-stained old brick fireplace, she squirmed, suddenly choking, coughing up dark brown spurts of tea onto her sweater design in her lamp. Mixed colors bled thin rivers to the edges of the paper. Gripping the teacup, she jumped up. Her picture slipped off her lamp onto the floor. Deciding her design was as good as done, she carried the picture of paper to the tiny front wall on the other side of the tiny front door, just beneath a tiny sleeping loft above a tiny bathroom next to the kitchen. As usual, she grabbed a large silver steel handle, pulling out and down a relatively large black steel compartment door, slipping yet another work of art into the outdoor drum bin as the compartment door whooshed shut. Back in the dining room, at the tiny back wall, she drew the tiny window's blind for the first time in her life. Peering through the window, she could barely see anything through a translucent veil covering the pane. Gradually, she actually made out a tool shed, a rather large, well-kept tool shed at that, and even more than that, the tool shed, wood-sided and gray, was arranged neatly in a freshly mowed backyard, a rather large backyard, too, behind an actual house. And the house was huge. It was actually a mansion. In fact, it was a white, well-kept palace. But why was it right there? And did people actually live there? And where in the world had she ended up? In the slave quarters? And where in the world was she? An actual slave? The teacup dropped from her softened grip. Baked clay smashed on the wooden floorboards. Hot tea ran around her feet. She lifted her toes to escape from the heat, but her heels were burning too. Don't you think she needs money? You're taking her very livelihood away from her all the time, and she's just a person. She needs just as much as anyone else. How is she supposed to survive without your support? You're the only one having anything to do with her. By your own choice, no one else's. She has everything she needs in her heart, Mabel. Her heart holds her true. Right there inside her very own spirit is a world of infinite wealth beyond measure. She lives there, not really in this world. Clara, that's not really the literal truth of this planet of physical organisms. You're not being realistic. What if she were wrong? What's the difference? She has to eat just as much as any little creature has to. If all she had were flies to eat, she would have to cook them up and gobble them down. You're not going to make her eat flies, are you? Then help the poor girl out, for God's sake. I told you, Mabel, it's not within my control to change anything going on. Something greater than myself has a grip on all my circumstances. And that girl is the biggest circumstance I could ever dream of living up to in life. And now I've got an even bigger problem, Mabel. Can you open your ears a little more right now? This next thing I've got to say is much more significant than anything else I've ever told you. What, Clara? There's something even worse going on? Well, fire away. I'll keep my bulletproof vest on. Here is the big bad new thing, Mabel. It's so bad, I don't have a clue as to what to do about it. Just saying, Clara. We've gotten this far with it all. Go ahead. Don't be afraid. And a 1, and a 2, and a 3, and I'm out of basement room. There's no more room for anything else in the basement. And then girl's art is piling up in the garbage bins. What am I going to do? There's only one way to look at that. Transfer her art from the garbage bins to the living room, not the basement. Make an art gallery out of all her new stuff. I can't do that because those bad people out there could find her here. There's no telling what they would do. They could even break in. It's not safe. They could take everything from us. We could end up homeless and starving on the streets just because this house isn't big enough for 3 people. Then why don't you hide the fact that she's the artist? If her name is on anything, cover it up with your own name. With what? I don't even know how to paint. I'll do it then. My old paint set is still around here somewhere, I think. I'll just pull it out of the cobwebs and we'll be set. But we will have to invite people over for showings. Otherwise, if anyone sees the art on their own, they're liable to sue us for evasions. Invite people? You've got to be kidding, Mabel. How are we going to do that? Oh, it's nothing, Clara. I'll just post a classified ad in the paper. But what if they see her art in the garbage bins? They could snoop around and find her. Peering through the window for any signs of any garbage bins, she stretched her neck from side to side, squinting, not seeing any bins anywhere. In her lavender flannel pajamas, slipping on her fluffy pink slippers, she opened the front door of the cottage for the first time in her life. Facing a rather wide alley, she hugged her shoulders for warmth against the blow of a strong gust of chilly air. Across the alley, past the tiny outdoor drop-off bin attached to the front wall, stood a huge black steel garbage bin. Emanating from the bin was a strong stench of sour melon. Still hugging herself with one arm, she held her nose from the disgusting odor with the free other hand as she walked up to the bin. Looking up, she discovered a whole bunch of their art pieces, piled up several feet high, spilling over the sides of the bin. Turning back around, she discovered the cottage to be a tiny, disheveled old bungalow with wooden siding covered in dirt-stained dark green paint, peeling. Around the back, facing the tool shed, the only window was framed in peeling, black-painted, weather-beaten wooden shutters, exposing several broken grids hanging loosely off of several dangerously protruding, heavily rusted nails. Back on the cottage's front, she noticed, attached to the front wall on the other side of the door, away from the drop-off bin, a tiny, peeling, dark brown painted wooden ladder leading up to a tiny roof. Going back into the cottage, she changed into a sky blue zipper front sweat jacket, faded blue denim jeans, and a pair of dark brown hiking boots. Back outside, climbing the ladder slowly and gently, for the wooden rungs weather-winked and crinked with every one of her freshly laid steps, she discovered at the top of the ladder a tiny, thin black tarp covering the entire roof, which was angled slightly downward from the back to the front. Around the turf perimeter, just above narrow strips of tiny white steel gutters lining the roof's edges, several tiny plain red bricks were nested on top of the tarp inside the gutter's depressions. Carefully, she placed all of the bricks in a semicircle around a tiny chimney top on the side edge of the roof next to the ladder. Then, she lifted up the front edge of the tarp, flipping the tarp and rolling the tarp onto the slightly elevated back edge of the roof, exposing a rather large gash through worn black shingles in the roof's center. Back on the ground, she climbed into the garbage bin, grabbing armfuls of her art pieces, carrying each armful up the ladder to the cottage roof. When she had finished taking all of her art to the roof, she recovered the room, that time along with her art, nesting the bricks back on top of the tarp's edges over the gutters as she tried to squash her art, pressing her bare hands over the tarp to try to keep the bulge of her art from showing from underneath the tarp. Going back inside the cottage, she examined the ceiling for any signs of any overbearing weight. I placed the gallery art in the paper Clara. It was just one quick call. Now let's turn the living room into a gallery. No, not the living room, Mabel. Find out the spare room upstairs. But they'd have to go ahead and use the stairs. We can't have strangers trudging their muddy shoes all over the carpet. If we do that, this place will be a pigsty. We can just cover the stairs with some roll-out plastic. Then every time another show is over, we can lift up the plastic to finally have the carpet all to ourselves again. I don't suppose many people know much about it anyway. We will probably never have any patrons. Give yourself some credit, Clara. Show some pride, or else no one is going to think you're the artist. Should I go get some of my art now? Yes, do that. In the meantime, I'll prepare the walls for the hangings and the floors for the mountings. She saw no one through the window. In a few minutes, she heard some banging around going on in the bin. The noise stopped quickly. Then she heard some heavy footsteps quickly moving away from the bin. Still, no one was in her sight as she continued peering through the window. Mabel, there's something really strange going on. There wasn't any art in the bins. I know there was art in the bins. Did you see a whole bunch of art in the bins earlier today? I didn't go out to the bins today, Clara. Are you sure there's art in the bins? Yes, I am positive. I made a desperate point about what to do about the crowded basement, didn't I? Why else would I have made such a big deal about it? Someone must have found out about the art. We must have an art thief on our tail. What are we going to do? Call the police. Tell them. No, Mabel, I can't do that. They don't do anything for me. There's only one way to handle this. We have to take this in our own hands. It's completely up to us. Then, what do you suggest we do at this time? I already placed the gallery ad. Should I cancel it? No, those reporters at the paper could get suspicious and come around wondering what's going on. We can't let that happen. They could point long cameras at us, blatantly blasting open our doors with big loud equipment and magnanimous vehicles interrogating us night and day. No way. We should stick with our gallery plan. Let's move the art from the basement to the spare room. What do you think about that? I suppose that makes most sense. Let's go down there and start moving the art upstairs. After sundown, as inconspicuously as possible, in green lace black sneakers and a gray padded winter jacket over a green and black checkered flannel shirt and black denim jeans, she quietly walked out of the cottage to the front of the tool shed which faced the mansion. Firmly cranking the shed's door latch with her bare hands, after several twists of the latch, she finally discovered the door to open with an extra strong tug. Once inside the shed, she closed the door snugly behind her. Pitch black darkness prevented her from seeing anything at first. As her eyes adjusted, she started to see a completely bare interior, except for a makeshift man-sized hole in the center of the floor that had been apparently sawed in a circular path straight through the floor's wooden floorboards. Examining the hole, she discovered a man-sized tunnel descending from the hole down into the earth. Lining one side of the tunnel were wooden rungs. Silently waiting, she lay on the floor of the shed, keeping the door closed, hardly ever budging, and soon falling asleep. Waking up to a narrow strip of sunlight streaming through a crack under the door, she descended down the tunnel. Once the tunnel had finished a steep downward direction, she was relieved to discover that the tunnel's suddenly straight path, albeit still earthen, was remarkably large enough to comfortably walk through upright. After a long walk, she saw a few feet ahead of her, apparently at the end of the tunnel, a white commercial stairwell door, closed. When she got to the door, she breathed a sigh of relief as her extra firm twist to the door's knob quickly opened the door with a crisp snap. Walking inside, however, she felt cold and sticky. Without warning, the door behind her immediately slammed shut with a loud bang. Mabel, what was that? What was what, Clara? Didn't you hear that noise? What noise? That loud clanging noise. It sounded like it came from the basement. Nothing clangs down there, Clara. I'm going down to look. I'm going with you there. She was startled by a sudden bright light, filling apparently a huge basement, judging by the concrete walls and floor and lack of any windows. On the other side of the room, two old women stood in front of a door at the top of a high wooden staircase. The women were slender and somewhat tall, in pairs of shiny high heels, one violet and the other pink, with short curly hair, one blonde and the other red. Both wore gold necklaces, one laden with pearls and the other with diamonds, and silk blouses, one gold and the other purple, and skirts, one red and white striped and the other blue and cream checkered. Immediately the women gazed, fixed on her. Who is that, Clara? That's my artist. That is not your artist, is it, Clara? Yes, that is my artist. I remember her from the first day she arrived on my doorstep. She asked me for a job. I put her up in the guest quarters right away. I haven't even so much as merely seen or heard her ever since then, not even one time, even after you, Mabel, moved in with me, right after Father passed away. Why have you been ignoring her? She looks sick and hungry. She's too thin, and she's as white as a ghost. Help that poor woman, Clara. I told you over and over again to take care of that girl. Now here she is without meat on her bones. She saw that particular old woman quickly descending down the stairs, approaching her with a concerned look on her face. Staying put, the other old woman stared blankly at her with a frown. The one who came to her embraced her warmly. What's your name, sweetie? She did not talk. Can you talk? Turning to the old woman asked, Clara, did you know she's nude? No, she is not, Mabel. She can talk. I know she can. How else would she have asked me for a job? Did she ask you in words, or did she use hand gestures? Like this, for instance. The old woman flipped a middle finger off at the other old woman. No, Mabel, she's not like that. She's a highly competent artist. But what, Clara? I can't really tell you what's going on, Mabel. Turning back to her, the old woman said, Maybe you can tell me what's going on. You might be all right. Are you just scared? Looking down a bit into her youthful blue eyes, the old woman slowly pulled back her long blonde hair, gently rubbing her ears. You feel a bit cold. Can you hear me? Can you gesture yes or no? She didn't budge. I think you're going to talk soon. Maybe you just need some food in your belly. Let's go upstairs and get something to eat. The other old woman looked at the old woman. The other old woman said, Mabel, are you sure you want to do this? You don't even know what's going on. This is very bad. Those bad people are out there. You know? The ones who don't let me do anything with that girl. The old woman paused her ascension up the stairs, stopping her right behind her. The old woman looked at the other old woman. The old woman said, What, Clara? Anything? What do you mean by anything? The other old woman screamed. That's it. Now you know what's going on. The other old woman quickly turned around, running back through the door. The old woman turns around on the staircase, hugging her warmly. It's all right, honey. I'm like that too. I've just never told anyone either, not even Clara. Reaching out to her, the old woman held her hand as they both ascended the stairs, entering the first floor of the mansion. She stayed in the huge, elaborate kitchen as the old woman looked around for the other old woman. On the third floor, the old woman found the other old woman in the other old woman's bedroom, packing up some of the other old woman's belongings into a suitcase. The old woman said, "Where are you going, Clara, at a time like this?" The other old woman frowned. "At a time like what?" "This is a magic moment in our lives, Clara. We're about ready to sit down to a glorious brunch with our special guest of honor, the one you love a lot, don't you? How much do you love her? I mean, our guest of honor. Do you know who I mean?" The other old woman slumped under the side of the bed, frowning a wide-open mouth of speechlessness. "Clara, what's wrong?" asked the old woman. Giving in, the other old woman fell back onto the bed in tears. The old woman said, "Are you a sad woman, Clara?" "No, I'm not sad, Mabel. I'm in love with my artist. Now you know. Then I suppose you two won't be alone in here." The old woman left the other old woman on the bed. In a minute or two, she belonged into the bedroom, huge and plush, sitting down in a huge white wicker chair facing the other old woman in a huge bed. As the other old woman sat up in the bed, the two made eye contact, smelling the fragrance of frying eggs and bacon wafting into the bedroom. The other old woman said warmly, "Do you remember me? I'm Clara. Mabel is my sister." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words passed from her lips. "We made love a long time ago," said the other old woman, "back when you first arrived on my doorstep asking for a job." She shrugged, still not remembering. "I just now remember that something very bad happened. Do you remember that bad thing that happened to you and me?" Her brow wrinkled in her apparent confusion. "You must be suffering from trauma. I must be too, but not as badly as you. Not anymore, anyway." Beginning to see the light, she nodded her head. "It might be safe to go over this with you now. I hope it's okay to tell you. What is going on is that you were assaulted. Do you remember when that happened? Right after you and I made love in my bed. This one, as a matter of fact. A strange man broke into my house. You were taking a shower in my bedroom's bathroom. Then all of a sudden I heard you screaming. I ran to the bathroom, shocked to see a strange man on top of you in the tub. His fists were clenching your neck and making you gasp for air. I screamed in terror. Right away he saw me and got scared, I think. He jumped off of you, pushing past me through the bathroom door, almost knocking me down. Then I heard his footsteps sounding like he was running downstairs and then through the front door. At that point, I figured he was gone for good. Ever since then, we've been picking up the pieces of our lives. You've been isolating yourself in the guest house where I've been taking care of you. I'm terribly sorry, honey, that I didn't protect you from that man. I should have kept my house more secure. Can you forgive me?" She opened up a big, warm smile. "Yes," she whispered. Clara stood up, crying tears of joy, warmly embracing her. "Do you remember your name?" asked Clara. "Sarah," said the girl. "I'm Sarah. Sarah Dill." "Yes," cried Clara. "You're Sarah Dill. I remember now, too." Mabel came into the bedroom. Looks like you two are doing okay. I made us a nice big brunch. Let's celebrate at the dinner table together. In a huge, elegant dining room, Sarah, Clara, and Mabel sat down together to a delicious feast of fried eggs, bacon, biscuits, pancakes, and fresh fruit. Have some melon, Sarah, Mabel said, handing Sarah a large silver tray of chopped, fresh melon. It's a sweet, juicy one, right from the store, just yesterday. Not really from the garbage. Yes, Claire said, so don't worry, Sarah. The melon doesn't stink. Sarah slid some melon onto her plate. That's the end of my story, The Sleigh. I'm Anvil Panow.